Hi, everybody. So, yeah, talking about PLM and how it relates back to sustainability and the digital thread. So, really, the idea of this digital thread with PTC is maintaining that sort of traceability of that digital information across the organization and beyond. Okay, so typically, what we see with most of our customers is that most of the work starts in engineering. Okay, so there's all that 3D design information starting to define out the full product definition. And then once we've done that work in engineering, we then move into all the other different areas of the organization. Now, I'm not going to go through them all today, but there's a lot of things that are happening here. We've got, suppliers, we've got manufacturing, quality, operations, our service, sales and marketing, product management. Okay, so really the idea of the digital thread is it's really spanning that entire product life cycle within the company and goes beyond, as I said, to suppliers and customers, and it's really maintaining that traceability of information. Okay, so it's really about managing all that information, and so often what we see, you hear the term that PLM is the backbone of the digital thread, right? It's to manage all of that information. Okay, so if we look at PLM, really, again, it covers the enterprise, like for the designers, which I know we've got quite a few Windchill customers in here today, right? So what we're looking at is managing, the design information. Okay, so we're really managing that full product definition, managing that bill of materials. Okay, so we manage that bill of materials through its life cycle. Okay, making decisions about that, and then we share that with the rest of the enterprise through various methods. Okay, it might be using things like ThingWorx Navigate, whatever else it might be, but really enabling the enterprise to have that confidence in what they're looking at. It's the accurate information, up-to-date information. Okay, so when we come to looking at sustainability, obviously, it's really defined. A lot of that is defined by the product definition. Okay, so if we go to the next slide. So if we come back to this diagram that Paul was talking about a little bit earlier, okay, where we're looking at this sort of a different view of how we handle our products from a sustainability view, if you like. So we have this over on the left here, we've got our sort of earlier design areas where we might be selecting component suppliers for parts that we're going to buy, for parts we're going to make. We might be looking at material selection. And the reality is that probably 85 to 90% of the environmental impact is made at these points in time, right? If you're a traditional manufacturer making components, it's a little bit different for things like automotive where they're consuming energy as a product themselves. But there's a lot of that comes up front here in the impacts that you're making, in the materials that you're using, the suppliers that you're using, and what they do. Okay, so it's really important at that early stage as well to select the right things, make sure you're working with the right information. Okay, but then as we move along, when we get into manufacturing, right, we want to understand, what are the processes that we're going to use, what effects are they going to have on our things like greenhouse gas emissions, all of that kind of thing as well, where those materials are sourced, that kind of information as well. And then as we move into sort of the operate and service, maybe into our I guess traditionally used to be maybe scrap, but now there's a big focus on, recycle and reuse, remanufacture. Then we're looking at like the complete life cycle analysis. Okay, so there's a term that you might see a bit called green PLM, where we're looking at PLM because it's managing that BOM and the life cycle, but what is the sustainability impacts of that? Okay, so if we go on to, I guess what PTC has in this space is they have a lot of integrations with many different companies that provide these kinds of information. Okay, so just to focus on some of these. So the first one, really, we're talking about those early stages of things where we're doing the component supply integrations, right? So as I said, this is really about, stuff that we're going to select the right suppliers for your buy parts, okay? So that has a big effect. Obviously, depending on the product you make, there might be a lot of components in there that you buy. So that has a huge impact on what they're doing in terms of their materials, compliance around that. So PTC has integrations with a number of different partners covering different industries, like Silicon Expert, for specifically more around electronics component selection, pardon me, Ascent across a whole broad range of areas, but it's really around making sure that you are reducing the risk minimizing your impact from your selections for supplier parts that you're buying in, okay? On the next side of it is then what about the parts that you're actually making, okay? So when you're making them in-house, again, you know, what material meets my sustainability, cost, performance, and appearance criteria, okay? So I guess as traditionally as engineers, you know, we just used to look at maybe performance and cost, maybe appearance fit in there as well, but as Paul mentioned earlier, you know, sustainability is becoming a big driver. Companies are being asked that from their customers, you know, where are these materials coming from? What is the effect of them? So this becomes more important to understand, you know, the materials I'm selecting, what effect does that have? You know, have I got hazardous materials, recyclability, all this kind of thing. So again, there's a number of integrations that PDC offers, obviously with ANSYS and their granted materials database. That's a big one for LEAP as well. It's something that we provide, and we've got customers that run ANSYS, okay? So the other part then is also then the manufacturing side of things, right? So basically, how manufacturable is my product that I'm going to make? I'm not looking at excessive scrap. You know, what is the manufacturing footprint of this, right? How much energy am I going to consume? How much greenhouse gases am I going to produce from making all of this? So again, PDC is partnered with A Priori, who's a leader in this field, to basically pass that information across from our systems to work out, you know, that basically taking our 3D data and then working out what we're going to do in terms of manufacturability, cost, and footprint. Okay. And life cycle analysis integration. Okay, so essentially with this part, like through its entire, or through this design, I should say, you know, what's going to be the environmental impact of my complete product, my complete BOM, okay? So we look at the entire BOM structure of this, and then we can see what are we looking at in terms of all of those different options we talked about before, you know, hazardous material compliance, carbon footprint, you know, downstream analysis of that as well, okay? So we can start to assess those impacts, okay? So not just, there's a little talk there about downstream scope, so you know, you state your scope 3 emissions, which is really more, scope 1 is what you produce, what scope 2 is your indirect emissions, that might be the electricity that was generated for your buildings, and scope 3 is really the assets that are owned or controlled by them, okay? So what happens further down the chain. And then lastly is our green PLM integration, as I talked about before. Okay, so looking at the BOMs, the different configurations of those BOMs, and what effect does that have on things like, you know, you can see here CO2 emissions, you know, carcinogenic effects, whatever it might be. Okay, so again, there are tools. Sorry, I should say integrations to the Windchill product, which manages all your BOM to then take that information out into these other tools to help assess those sustainability goals. Okay, all right. So as I said, you know, PLM is the backbone of the digital thread. It's really managing that BOM, and we have those integrations into other tools to help with that. If we come back more internally within Windchill, right, and managing our data, again, there are a number of tools that have been in there for a while around helping with this. So one of the big ones that we've done quite a bit of work with a number of customers is around reducing part redesign, okay? So making sure that you are, you know, even for the parts that you make internally, you know, making sure that you're not remaking a part that already exists, okay? Because there's enormous costs involved in doing that, okay? So Windchill has a part and document classification option to let you define a whole series of attributes that you can then classify a part by, allowing engineers to go and find and reuse those parts based on all of that attribute information that you've defined against them, okay? So it helps with that reducing, improving reusability of the parts, okay? And I guess wrapped around all of that is search inside Windchill. So the ability to go and find all that information that's stored inside there. So I guess the thing with both of these things is this is really driven off the attributes, the information that you put into Windchill to help with that. And I guess without giving too much away for Philip's part of the presentation, you know, what we're looking at is what Mate is providing is something that's more at the base level of the CAD. At that early design stage, how can we ensure that we're not basically building another CAD model even before it starts to be put into PLM that already exists as well? So again, helping reduce that at those earlier stages.